They don't come to the Floodlight platform to learn what 10 options they have to invest in an ethical way, quote unquote. They come to Floodlight to create their investment policy and their approach to managing their wealth.
We'll start off by giving our mutual friend Victor all of the credit for making this conversation happen, because I had my guest for February. His wife had a baby, so we needed to move to another date, and I was left scrambling to find great founders to talk to continue this conversation about pursuing passions and building these businesses. And Victor hopped in real quick and said, you need to talk to Nate and Aaron at Floodlight. So I respect Victor's opinion. I headed over to the website. Loved what I saw, and here we are today. So that's the background. Usually I know my guests a little bit better coming in, so I'm excited to learn about Nate's background, Aaron's background, and then about Floodlight. And I told them beforehand that I did very, very little research. So as the listener, I'm learning just as you are. With that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Aaron and just real quick kind of give us your background of kind of how you found your way to starting Floodlight with Nate, and what's your backstory.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. We're really excited to be on this podcast. We already really enjoy you after just meeting you briefly. And Victor has been phenomenal, a huge partner to us. So thank you, Victor. My background, it's funny. I spent the first 12 plus years as a banker. I started in wealth management and found my way into corporate banking. But all the while, I kind of likened myself to the round peg in the square hole, or however that saying goes, that every corporate gig I had, I tried really hard to find a way to make that a values-based job function. So when I was lending money, I was looking for companies that were mission-driven, and I wanted to lend them money at a better rate than other companies. And in wealth management, I was helping assign investment strategies to high net worth families and individuals. And I really wanted that to have an impact investing layer to it. And so all along my corporate journey, I kept trying to create this thing that didn't quite exist in the places I was, in the times that I was there. And it wasn't until I met Nate while we were both working at Silicon Valley Bank, and we're at the epicenter of the innovation economy. And finally, it became a reality that Nate and I, with our combined passions around all of our experiences in financial services and wanting to bring transparent data to investors and consumers alike to help them make informed decisions, that we realized, okay, we've got the background, we have the experience, we've seen innovation and entrepreneurship firsthand at SVB. Let's just quit fooling around and go start this thing already. So that was in 2019.
So I want to go back, Nate, we're going to get to you in a second, but Aaron's story, there's something that she shared that kind of stuck out to me. What was it that drew you to finding companies and trying to find the ones that are being overlooked or doing special things? Like, what was it about that rather than just going through the motions and giving money out to whomever came in?
Oh, such a good question. And I've never really thought about the why that deeply. But growing up in Boulder, Colorado, I think I attribute a lot of how I look at the world from kind of the utopia that can be Boulder in a lot of ways, where there wasn't a lot of sacrifice between doing well and doing good. It's a community that's very, to quote Techstars, give first. And I saw a lot of this behavior in the companies that surrounded me in my early childhood. And I saw it in the personalities of my teachers and in, the parents of my friends. And when I made it into the corporate world, I saw this disconnect where people weren't really just doing things for the right reasons. They were maybe incentivized for different reasons. And in my naivety, it just didn't make sense to me. And so I kept trying to find ways to recalibrate that towards what we describe now as values, but just doing things because your gut and your instinct tells you it's right, and that doing it that way will pay off in the long run.
Did you get any pushback at the corporation when you were going that route, or were they okay with you kind of pursuing that passion?
They were okay with me pursuing that passion as long as it didn't interfere with anything in my day job. So you can read between the lines there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, I think that it makes sense that you are where you are today and the path that you went going back to the childhood. That's why I was asking, because I'm guessing if we dove even deeper into your story, there's a lot of that ties into it that kind of leads you to this direction. And then we're going to come back to this because the big thing I really want to focus on this conversation is how Floodlight aligns with your passion and kind of leads you to your purpose, which I already know, at least in the direction that you're going to be going. So let's hear Nate's story before we kind of come back to Floodlight, and we'll do a real quick tease of what it is, and we'll hit that at the very end. So Nate, is your story as exciting as Aaron's?
No one's can be that exciting. I definitely have we had very disparate experiences growing up, but that's, I mean, not to cut to the chase, but that's exactly why I think Floodlight works so well. Is we're very different people, very different value systems, and pretty hard opposing views on a lot of things, and that helps the company. Like, instead of actually getting angry and throwing stuff at each other, we actually just show the data for how we got here. And specific to my story, so I was born. I'm the 10th of 10 children, and my mother was a debate coach growing up. Like, after she went back and got her degree, and so sitting around the table, just with the 12 of us, it was very much like they were kind of forcing us to take very strong views on politics, religion, philosophy, just from my earliest memories. And so understanding and them kind of curating us and making sure that we actually were focusing on data points rather than going ad hominem or other kind of just lame attacks. It really gave me an appreciation for how important it was to stick to the data and stick to things that actually mattered rather than kind of getting lost in the frills or the PR. So as I entered the workforce, I went to University of Utah, and there I'll just tell the short version here. But at our commencement ceremony, the speaker retraced the story of Wells Fargo's old stagecoaches, and there were three classes of tickets. There was first class, where you had the best seat and you never had to get off your chair unless you wanted to. Second class was a little bit cheaper, and if there was ever a problem, like a wheel breaking or a horse that went lame or something, you just had to get out of the stagecoach and move to the side. And then third class was the cheapest, and if anything ever happened, your job was you couldn't rest until you actually helped get the stagecoach back up and running and moving. And at the commencement ceremony, the speaker said, "You have all now been given a third class ticket to the world. Use what we've given you here at the university to go out and fix problems, because you can go out and make a ton of money and you'll all be successful and you're smart. But there's a lot of problems out there, and we didn't give you this education just so you could be rich." And that really, really sunk into me as a mission-driven person, and kind of translating that through my family experience. As I became more familiar with big data at Wells Fargo, I moved from the retail world over to the commercial world and ended on the foreign exchange desk. That's where I saw a lot more of like Bloomberg and LexisNexis and FactSet and a lot of the other software that folks use, and really seeing the big disconnect between how expensive that was for everyday folks and then how important it was for big companies to have that info. Really kind of just made me mad that that info wasn't more freely available. So as Aaron and I got recruited over to SVB, and got to know each other, being on the same team to help these growth companies, we really started riffing on this concept of like, wouldn't it be awesome if a company could actually just tell people what's really going on with companies? Because if people are educated enough with fact, they make good decisions with their money, and they reward companies based on what really works for them on values and alpha. And we couldn't find that, so we built it.
We're going to get to Floodlight here in a second, the high level. But I have to ask, Nate, that quote from commencement about we're giving you the tools to go solve the problems. Obviously, there's a problem we're going to hear about that Floodlight solves. But what is the big problem that's always called you to lead you to where you are now? Is it the problem you're solving at Floodlight, or is this Floodlight solve one problem on the way to the next problem, if that makes sense?
Yeah, great question. I definitely think the problem we fix is people want to live their truth. People today want every part of their life, their money, where they live, where they study, what they're reading, what they're digesting. They want that to be a reflection of who they are. And personalization, customization, I think is the wave of the future. That's how I feel as a consumer, as an investor, and as an employee of Floodlight. And so using technology to make that easier in the investment world seemed like a big hole for us. There were certainly people like Victor and others that are starting to suss out how big this movement is. But that's what we solve. We give them those tools to first understand the values of their customers and then steer them into investments that match.
All right, so that's a good intro to Floodlight. Again, we'll get into specifics at the end, but Aaron, let's first talk the name. How did you guys come up with the name? And I think that will lead us into a little bit too of a conversation of high level. What is Floodlight anyways? I think listeners by now figure out, okay, it's something to do with investments, understanding the companies they're investing in, and bringing the technology to consumers. Is that a fair, first time talking to you guys description?
You nailed it. That's great.
Okay. So Floodlight, I have a guess of what the name means, but there's probably more to it than the obvious. So Aaron, what's the story behind Floodlight as the name?
Well, you're asking me, but Nate actually came up with the name. So
Okay.
I'll defer to Nate because he's got a great story
Fair.
here. And we can give you some of the dirt on the founding story of Floodlight too in the process.
We definitely want that. So that's fair.
Yeah, and I need to be fully transparent because that's what our company is. My wife actually came up with it as we were talking about the concept. So we had the idea, and as Aaron and I were kind of riffing on it, we knew that we wanted to create something that let people have a more full perspective of everything that's happening in either a financial product or an equity. And we're in LA, so you can kind of see from the logo. I like that image of like the searchlights for movie premieres, etc. But the idea really that we shine a light on some of the darker, and I don't mean that as in bad, but just the things that are not brandished on the marquee or on the headlines. We just shine a light on everything that matters. And I say everything as aspirational. We have 3 data sets so far and about 100 more scoped. But the idea for us is we want to fill in those gaps where people say like, hey, this issue does matter enough to me to move money around. Like, it's really nice that you're showing me this PR and your EPS was great last quarter. I really care about diversity, or I really care about how you're making your money, or oil, or your environmental record. That's where we saw some pretty strong gaps, and that's what we shine that light on. So Floodlight really is just meant as that flashlight that lets people look at every part of a company that matters to them.
Awesome. All right, Aaron, what's the dirt on the
dirt?
startup of Floodlight? Yeah, I want the
I'm
dirt.
always
That's
good
what
for
everybody
some
wants.
Well, it's funny. And Nate's wife gets glory for this as well. At the outset, you'll learn about Nate. Like, he has very strong values and he stands to them very strongly. And he wanted to name the company Slingshot in the very beginning because he saw this as David versus Goliath. And we were going to be taking, strong actions. And his wife, in her ever-present wonderful knowledge, said, Nate, I think you need to soften the name a little bit. The Floodlight. And I realize this is going out on the internet. So now we can't call that dirt anymore. It's just out in the open.
I like it though. I think it still could have worked. But I do think Floodlight tells the story a little bit better. I think the David versus the Slingshot would require more explanation. So if we're looking at a platform and we know we're looking for investment news, Floodlight to me says, okay, we're shining everything on. There might be a way. I'm real big into branding. There might be a way that through content down the road, you can bring that Slingshot back into it. As you kind of see people using your technology and starting to uncover, and if you start, whether it's through Floodlight or just the trends of ESG investing, we start to see that dollars flow away from the big guys to the smaller guys or girls doing the good stuff, then that could be your moment to bring the Slingshot into the picture. So there might be hope for it in the future.
Well, and to be totally fair too, I've certainly worked on surrounding myself with much smarter people than I am, of which Aaron and my wife are great examples. But I think one of the concerns with the old name was just hey, what if businesses think that you're coming to fight them? How is this going to work? And really the Goliath in that metaphor for me wasn't that, it was ignorance. A lot of people really just didn't have the time or have the resources to really get that data. So that was the intent. Again, just trying to justify myself, but I feel like I'm digging it deeper. So that's the whole setup.
No, I like that. Well, all right. So you have good jobs at the bank. You guys are probably living comfortable, whatever comfortable it may be. But I remember when I left to start my own company, there's that fear, that concern, but there's got to be something that's pulling you real hard to take that leap. And I know we've talked a little bit about it, but talk about the decision to leave the bank to start Floodlight, and then talk a little bit about the first year of Floodlight running right into COVID and that whole experience.
Yeah, that is a really good one. I'll start with pre-COVID because it's more fun to talk about. And this may be a little bit too on the nose given the theme of your podcast, but like I was very cautious. I'm a pretty analytical, very linear thinking individual. And so when Nate and I started talking about doing this, this was like a big change, a big life change. And I think when we first started talking, I think at the time, it was my boyfriend at the time. We had just gotten engaged. And so I just looped this man into my life and was now telling him, by the way, I'm going to no longer be a banker, which I've been my entire life that you've known me. I'm going to give up all of my money and pursue my dreams. But he was incredibly supportive. First of all, we've now become married and we have a kid, so it's all worked out. But as soon as I decided to do this and Nate and I jumped in both feet first, I truly feel like I am for the first time professionally living my values. And so there's this crazy correlation. Like the harder it gets with Floodlight, like the entrepreneurialism is just hard. Starting businesses is hard. You know this firsthand. And so there are more days where I'm pulling my hair out thinking like, how do we go faster? Are we doing this right? Whatever. But no matter how hard it gets, I'm more fulfilled and rewarded by this work. And I can tell you also firsthand, there's zero correlation to paycheck and happiness when it comes to this work for me. Almost, well, I don't want to say inversely correlated because I would like, there to be some money in this. But yeah, it's been phenomenal. And then maybe on the second point, and Nate, of course, I would love your side of this too. We are both eternal optimists. So don't mean this to be too Pollyanna or rose-colored glasses, but COVID has really actually been an opportunity for us to focus on the business and less of the noise on the periphery and spend more time talking to customers and prospects and stakeholders that are really moved by our vision. And that's given us a great platform. And we've seen huge gains from this in the last, I'd say like 6 to 9 months. Things really have started to become salient for the business. So COVID, while it's crazy that I haven't seen my co-founder in person in like almost a year, which is very crazy to say, there have been some upsides. Yeah.
I want to dive deeper on your comment about you're living your values through first time in your work. How important is that? Because I think that a lot of times people don't think that that's possible. And I'm an eternal optimist as well. So I think a lot of the way that this type of stuff works out for us, we understand that. But it is possible to follow your passions. It is possible to turn that into a career or maybe a secondary career that supplements. But for you, why is it so important to live your values in your work life, or how has that become such a great provider of happiness for you? I guess there's a lot of ways you can answer that, but whatever that prompts you to say, I'm interested to learn more about that. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I just got done with an interview of somebody and we talked about this. So it's like very front and center for me right now. And to whittle it down, I'd say it's having a long-term outlook and like a conditionally positive long-term outlook. Like the here and now is hard. And if I were living in the present moment, I probably would have stayed where I was. I appreciated my paycheck. I worked with amazing, smart, fun people, clients, and teammates. But I didn't feel like I was, well, I guess I'm sure that smarter people before me have said this, but it's what do you want to have written on your tombstone? And that really, really clicked with me. Like, I didn't feel like I was doing anything that mattered enough to the people I was surrounded by that I would be able to look back on my life and say like, man, she really like tried her hardest to do something amazing. And it was that epiphany that really sealed the deal. And I decided that I had to pursue something where no matter how this goes, I will look back and be so proud that I tried my best alongside Nate to bring something new to the market that doesn't exist that really makes the world better. And yeah, that guides me every day. I don't think about it every single morning when I wake up, but on the hard days, I think about it.
I love it. One of my big efforts now with the planning work that I do for clients is I want to help them minimize regret. So for you, having a career that you didn't feel was you were passionate about or that you were leaving your mark, and you didn't do Floodlight, you probably would have looked back later in life and had some regrets. And regardless of what happens with Floodlight, I'm optimistic as well. I think you guys are going to kill it. But regardless, you tried, you gave it your all, and you're leaving your thumbprint, you're leaving your impact. And I absolutely love that. Nate, I'm going to let you kind of give your side to that story for yourself to complement what Aaron just shared.
Yeah, there's no better way to say it than Aaron phrased it. Because when we had the talk at the beginning, when we were just kind of saying, like, should we do this business? You could see that eternal optimism in both of us, but also we were at SVB. We saw hundreds of businesses flop, ones that had tons more funding than us, and had great ideas, but poor execution. And so we both knew the risk we were taking. But this idea, as we kind of built it together, really takes over this whole concept of, especially for me, just being able to enable anyone with any kind of financial footprint to say, like, hey, I might not be a billionaire, I might not even be a thousandaire, but my money is going to build a better world. And it being able to enable them to do that in a way that's unbiased and fair, that doesn't skew towards one viewpoint or another. It was hard for me to go back to my banking job after that with excitement. And I loved my job. I really had a great time. And as Aaron said, we worked with some of the best people in the industry, full stop. But this idea was so much more aligned with what I wanted to do with my life. And to be totally transparent as well, like my wife and I have several children, and seeing them kind of take their first steps into I mean, the oldest is 11, but I guess just into being a global citizen and understanding like what their responsibility is, similar to the stagecoach metaphor I gave. I couldn't look at them and say, I expect you to go fix problems in the world if all I really did in my career was make a bunch of money by helping other businesses. So that was a big driver for me to be like, I can't do this. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be so much better that Aaron and I are doing it together. And the tailwinds are definitely in our favor and have certainly blown harder since we started.
We're going to come to optimism here in a second, because I want to dial in on how powerful optimism is and getting control of that in your mind. But how did you overcome the fear of launching your business, leaving that comfortable paycheck, benefits? Like, how were you guys each able to overcome that fear?
Yeah, I didn't. Like there's still definite fear in me, and I think that's helpful, when we harness it the right way. But I think for me, like the one of those defining moments in my life really came when I was thinking about. I have a mentor that I've worked with who's launched his own several companies actually, and he really helped me start pushing this idea out. And when he realized the gaps that were in my background, he was just like, you really should think about a co-founder, and you can figure this out. When I thought of Erin, and definitely I didn't know that she had wanted to be an entrepreneur before. I didn't know about her doing ultra high net worth at Wells. We didn't know each other at Wells, and I'd only known her for about a year and a half at SVB. Her name just shot to my mind as like, hey, we could do this. This could work. And that really got a lot of the fear away from me of like, oh yeah, if Erin's doing this is going to work awesome because she has all the skill set that I don't have, and I can help on the data piece and the directions that I bring to the table. And she's pumped for this. This could work. So that helped me enormously.
What about you, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, that it's a huge shout out for folks that are thinking about starting companies. Like, don't feel like you need to go it alone. There's a lot to be said for the companionship of a professional partner and a co-founder. So yeah, I mean, that's a huge part. And I don't know, I think when you start out, at least for me, like starting out and doing something that is all, there was a time where it was just me and Nate, and now we have, a team, and we have investors and stakeholders and advisors. So there's a lot of us contributing to the success of Floodlight, but it's still like our vision. And so the fear is still immense that it's like, this could fail. I really don't believe that it will. And I see it taking off, but every day there's the reality that, if we don't hustle hard enough, if we don't stay on top of the cultural zeitgeist, like we always talk about, that we could be back to lives that are different than we're living right now. And maybe that's what motivates me. I don't know. I don't know the line between motivation and fear.
It's blurred. Well, so on the fear, is it the fear of failure, of Floodlight not working, and whatever comes from that, or is it the fear of Floodlight not working and your mission not being out there? Meaning, is the fear more of the financial fallout for the two of you and your families, or is the fear more, if we don't do this, then people won't have access to this information? And as your mission statement says, you guys want to reinvent the financial system. Where does the fear? I mean, there's probably both, but where does the fear tilt heavier for you?
So heavily on the latter. The industry that we're in right now, we're very much in the category of ESG and impact investing. So ESG, environmental, social, and governance-based investing, thinking about corporate behavior over just financial performance. This is an industry that is really coming into the light, pardon the metaphor, in the last 3 to 5 years, and there's very strong indicators that there's going to be widespread mass adoption, but we're kind of in uncharted territory. And so the obligation and the commitment that we feel to make sure this works, so that all the companies that are going to follow and continue this trend of really investing and engaging and buying in a new way, I feel like it's on us. We have to get this right for all of the people that want it and for all of the businesses that will come after us. So it does feel like we're leading a wave. And again, it's an opportunity, but the worry of not doing it right and then setting the industry back, that absolutely weighs heavily on me.
And Nate, I see you nodding your head. What do you have to add to that?
Yeah, so the only other thing I want to throw in there is some of the biggest complaints that we've heard in our research is that people are having trouble understanding what's greenwashing or what's bogus messaging versus the truth. And so since we've seen a ton of acquisitions in our space of companies that aren't doing exactly what we're doing, because we're certainly unique and we haven't found anybody doing it our way, but there certainly have been a flurry of very big players buying up smart players that are kind of sniffing around in our way. And I really don't want us to become one of those companies that's like, ooh, wow, these guys could change something. Why don't I go buy it and crush it? Because as Aaron said, our mission really is to reinvent that system. So I guess the fear for me then is we would ever be tempted to, either with a sweet acquisition or with some other shift away from where our core is, that in the end just does status quo for what's wrong with the investment world.
If I see a headline that Floodlight has been acquired, I'm going to hit you guys up real quick and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Make sure that you don't sell out.
Please do it.
This is a comment I could easily skip over, but I'm saying it because I genuinely believe this, even just off this short conversation. I think the reason that the fear for both of you lies on the fact that your mission will not be lived out, that's the greater fear. It's not the financial side. We'll bounce back. We can do something else. But the fact that that's the fear that's motivating you and driving you, that's why it's going to be successful. That's why you're going to work, because I'm a big believer in you have to do things genuinely and for the right reasons. And yes, you need this business to help provide for your family. You need to have a living, and you should. But the motivator for you is you want to change the way that people invest. You want to change the way that people reward companies with their dollars. And if you do not succeed, then that may not happen. And that's the motivator. It's mission driven, like we've talked about. It's purpose. I love that, and I think that's why you guys are going to be successful. And that's why when it gets hard, you keep going. Because there's always those moments. I'm sure COVID gave you plenty of opportunities. I have a drawing on my a Gary Vee styled wall of just junk. And it's not junk, it's stuff. And my director of operations got this cartoon that I love, drawn by the high school art teacher. It's there's two guys digging under the ground, and one guy is turning around going back, and the other guy is going super hard. And the gentleman who is turned around to go back and is defeated is one strike underground to getting to the other side where there's like all these treasures and a dinosaur skeleton. Like the treasure's right there. He's one hit away and he gave up and turned back. And the other guy's just going crazy and, he's going to get there because he has that drive. And I always look at the bottom guy and I tell myself, anytime there is a struggle, there's a challenge, it's the universe, it's God, it's whatever divine being you believe in, testing you to see how much do you believe in it. And if your fear is money, you're going to be the guy that turns around. But if your fear is we're not going to impact investing like we want to, you're the guy that's going to keep on going until you get through because you have to. So there's still going to be challenges, but since your motivation is purpose, it's going to keep you going forward, which I absolutely love. And I think that's a good
Justin, you're hired. We need this. We should talk weekly. This is really good for us.
No, I was already thinking about before we got done. Like, I definitely want to keep in touch, even outside of Floodlight, just because I love surrounding myself with people who understand that there's more to the greater good than just money and finances. Like, that's important. We all need that. But I think that if you focus on the right things, then all the money and finance stuff, it sorts itself out. But that's the eternal optimist. That's the rosy glasses the three of us wear. But you can't convince me any other way. And I've only seen it continue to work for me and other people who share that light. Ties us into optimism. That was not on our spreadsheet. It came up, and I think that's a very important thing. We talk about starting businesses, having the confidence to follow something that is maybe different from everybody else. Where did you get your optimism? Have you always had it, or is it something that you were able to condition yourself to always see the silver lining?
I'll go first. So I really do think I have always been an optimist. I could definitely ask my family, but I really feel like a lot of it came from my upbringing. So being in a big family, like you really don't get your way a lot, especially when you're the youngest of this many kids. And so like just being able to be like, I didn't get this, but I'm not going to let that ruin me was huge for me growing up. And then I promise I don't have any financial interest in this, but I have an app called WeCroak, and it does 5 texts a day that just gives you it's a Buddhist theory that basically says if you contemplate death 5 times a day, that's the secret to eternal happiness, because then you'll focus on the things that actually matter. And it sends some really good nuggets over to me every once in a while, especially when we have down days, and we've had them. Those ones to remind me like, hey, this is the only time you get. Like, this is your moment. This is the opportunity that you get to either put your fingerprints, I think of the way that you mentioned it, on the financial system, or quit and go back. And so I think that in a perverse way, thinking about like my own mortality has really helped me to stay optimistic, because we live in a time of embarrassing prosperity just across our country when you look at it in the sweep of history. So that really anchors me in what we're actually doing and why I should be optimistic about it.
So WeCroak wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I've seen the calendars, like every week you color in the block. That's how many weeks you have left of life. And I'm a big Ryan Holiday fan who writes like the Stoicism books, and he has a coin that I have that's Memento Mori, which means remember death, which is just to that point. It's not so different than WeCroak. And I actually have it. We can't see it. I actually have it tattooed on my forearm. So like when I look down, it's tattooed, so it's looking at me as a reminder to me, not to somebody who might see it. So I totally get that remembering. What about you, Aaron? How's optimism found its way to you?
I don't think I have anything nearly as eloquent and good of a story as Nate just shared. Honestly, I think it's just been in my life, and this might have been debilitating at a point, but it's always been easier to think things are good than to dwell on things being bad. And I like progress. I like moving forward. And so I get tunnel vision for the good stuff, and I run towards it. Like I said, not as eloquent as Nate.
And the thing is, and the reason I like that we're talking about optimism is it is a very powerful outlook on life. And I also think that some people are conditioned to just naturally be that way. That's how I view I am. I don't know why, but I've always been optimistic. And thinking of starting a business, there's no way I wasn't gonna succeed. Like, failure wasn't an option. If I have an opportunity to bet on me or anybody else, I'm picking me 110 times out of 100. Like, me or Elon Musk, I'm picking me. That's just like the way I operate. I'm not going to fail. Because even in failure, I find ways to get through. But I don't know if you guys have ever taken the Enneagram test, but my wife took it, and she's reading a book about it. And like, there's the numbers, and there's definitely the personalities, and the whatever number it is that is optimistic, like that's totally me. And as you're reading it, you're kind of like, it's weird. And so there are these things I think we're just naturally born with. But the reason I want to talk about optimism is if you are that person who's naturally pessimistic, I don't know if you can recondition your brain fully, but I think you can have triggers where you notice yourself drifting to that negative side, where you have something that recenters you, whether it's, meditation or something that to give you that self-awareness of, okay, I'm drifting negative. Let me pull myself back forward and be positive, because we all know the Debbie Downer. And I don't think that people who are negative intentionally continue to bring negative things on them. But I do think there is this, when you focus on the negative, it just brings more negative energy to you, and you just stay buried down, where, yes, even the greatest optimist out there, when we have something bad happen, we get down, we get frustrated, but then we look right through it real quick. We don't let it keep us down. My thing is, if I keep thinking negative, then I'm never going to escape this. So whatever it might be, I'll be bummed, and I'm going to get through it real quick, because I know the only way to move forward is to find the silver lining. So optimism is something we've never talked about on the podcast before, and I'm glad you guys brought it up, because I think it is a very powerful thing just in life in general. But if we're talking about following our passions and our pursuits, hopefully what it is that you're pursuing, you're optimistic about anyways, and that just kind of naturally pulls you that way. So thank you for bringing that up. I think it's very powerful. All right. Anything more when it comes to the passions that you guys have? Because the next thing I want to get into is talking more about Floodlight and what it is that you guys do at a deeper level, so people have a better understanding. And I know you guys have some initiative of working with clients, not so much advisors, to figure out what it is that they want. But I guess my question to lead us into the deeper part is, Nate, you mentioned you guys do something different than some of the other companies out there that are helping with the screening. What is it that Floodlight does different from everybody else that you can share without divulging your trade secrets? That
Yeah, great idea, and great caution for us. Thank you. So what we do that's different is a lot of people will compare us to robo advisors, and we really don't play much in that space. Our whole goal is to help the advisor be the smart one in that room, and that can really build that relationship. And we do that by actual data, and we define data really as factual evidence of what that person's value is presented by that company. So for instance, if somebody, and I should probably qualify this a little bit, with how we approach the data itself, we're fully agnostic. So one of the biggest criticisms of the ESG movement, so the environmental, social, and governance that Aaron had highlighted, we follow some British reporters that said, like, it used to stand for eye roll, sneer, and guffaw was the original acronym, because people were always just like, what? I got to make alpha. There's no way I'm going to put anything else on top of that. And for us, we really argue that you can make alpha probably just as much, if not more, if you hold your financial advisor's feet to the fire, really, and not to hit our target market here, but like, if you're paying somebody a good chunk, it is not too much to ask for them to say, great, make it on my terms. And so for us, the secret sauce, if you will, that we're happy to share is, one, we're agnostic, so we just help that advisor understand the values of their client and then show them data that corresponds, whereas most of the industry says, you love the environment, right? And you vote this way politically, right? And this is how you feel about energy, right? Cool. Here's an ETF that we've made perfectly for you. We think that's actually, we want to flip that on its head and saying the advisor sits with the client and has that relationship. They should be able to be guided in understanding the values that matter enough to their client to move money, and then give them the products that match. So the agnostic on values is probably first for us. And then second, that we rely on full-on data instead of just company-prepared information that says, hey, we got a 4.0 this quarter on our grades. Most of the time, our goal is really to cut through that and tell them, no, this is what's actually happening at the company in a way that really matters to you.
Which I think is helpful, because, as we know, marketing is a very big business, and I always think about like food. Everything is natural now. And like, so what does natural mean? And what does organic mean? And there's all, like, they find ways to be able to use these terminologies to play to the interests of the consumer. And that's what the finance is doing. All the ESG ETFs out there, that a lot of them are probably not as ESG as the investor thinks, but there's no way for us to really know. How do you guys help? Like, I think about, like, BP is a company that always comes up. Like the initial thought is they're not high ESG rating because they're an oil company, yet on the other side of the business, they're doing a lot of green energy to kind of balance that out. How does Floodlight help the advisor and the consumer learn those types of things? Is there like a highlight of, okay, they're bad here, they're good here? How do you guys help sort those things out?
You asked that question in such a good way. It's like a layup, because that's how we do it differently. We start with our customers. So the financial advisor or the retail investor who wants to align their wealth with their values, they come to the Floodlight platform to define those values. They don't come to the Floodlight platform to learn what 10 options they have to invest in an ethical way, quote unquote. They come to Floodlight to create their investment policy and their approach to managing their wealth. And so in the case of BP, it could be that they want to find an oil and gas company that has a outstanding record on solar projects or environmental remediation. Those might be the things that they really care about. And on the Floodlight platform, they can set those definitions as their criteria for impact investing. And then the back end, our data and our AI help pick investments that actually align with those preferences. So we're really bespoke in that way. Nate mentioned it earlier, we liken ourselves to personalized medicine. It's no longer one size fits all in the industry. And we're the central database and dashboard where people get insights to make sure that they're making informed decisions, whichever way they fall on a myriad of spectrums.
As you were talking about coming to the platform, knowing what they want to look for, it makes me think of a client that came on board last year, and she had a desire to have no private prisons in her portfolio. So I had to do a lot of researching to try to figure out, okay, do the ESG ETFs I'm looking at, like, do they screen for that? And how do I know? And I can only see the top 10 holdings. So is it buried down there real low? And unfortunately, I guess not unfortunately, I had to tell her, to the best of my knowledge, we're clean. Like I've screened these, I've done the most that I can, but now I know about a Floodlight and I can go there and say, without a doubt, we have no exposure because the platform's there. So I think that's pretty powerful. And I do think, our business is working with a lot of young professionals, and stereotypically millennials and women, who are the two demographics that are coming into the greatest wealth over the next 30 years, they care more about this stuff. It's not that they don't want to make money, but they're willing to maybe make a little bit less money to do it in a way that aligns with their values. So another reason to be optimistic about what you're doing is there's going to be that, I think it's 300 trillion, 30 trillion, some huge number of transfer of wealth from the baby boomers to our generation, and our generation cares about this stuff. So I think it's good to have a watchdog, if you will, like you, that's going to help people to actually be able to invest in line with their values and know they are, rather than think they are and fall victim to good marketing and the shiny objects that Wall Street's going to put together out there.
Well, and imagine what an opportunity there is for the advisors who can brand themselves as, for women and for millennials specifically, like, hey, come with me and you're going to make just as much, if not more. Because I really do think it doesn't have to be concessionary. That's definitely out there and a possibility, but that's with everyone. For the advisors that are paying attention to this, we're not really doing rocket science. We're saying, like, hey, look at the things that this company is doing. Most people can understand, oh, wow, that's going to produce more money, or they're cutting corners. And there's usually a financial result to both of those activities.
And your mission and that view feeds into my vision for where I think the future of my side of the profession. So I am the advisor who's going to use Floodlight to help out. But I think about where my profession's going in the future, and it's not just financial planning. It's not just retirement planning. It's life planning. It's figuring out, okay, you have things that you want to do in your life, and you have things that you hold a higher value than others that you want to incorporate. What are those things? And then let's align your dollars to make sure, and not even investment dollars, let's align the dollars that you spend and that you allocate to live that life. And then now we can complement that with, let's allocate your investment dollars to feed into that as well. I do think that there's the potential that through ESG investing, when more of it is happening and happening in a true way, that we might see that change the policies within large corporations. Because I do believe that dollars will flow and they will leave, and they will go reward those companies that are doing it the right way, And the big dogs, they're not going to want to be left out, so they're going to change the way they do business to be able to keep those dollars in. So I think we're real early on with this, because what's accessible to the average investor is mediocre at best. And indexing is coming, custom indexing is coming, or direct indexing is coming, and that'll help out. But that's still going to be higher net worth. I think it sounds like with what you have, it's going to be able to let the hundredaires be able to go in and allocate their dollars the right way. So tell me more about what you're looking to do with the consumer side, so the client side. You've got the platform for the advisor, but you have an initiative to learn more about what clients want. What does that look like? And then listeners, if you're interested, I will make sure you know how to get in touch with Nate and Aaron to help out on that front.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yes, we're really excited about this because we're always trying to stay relevant and make sure that we're listening to the needs of people that care the most about these issues. And over the last year, what we've really learned is that it doesn't matter how much money you have. People are driven by values. And so if that means we can be an insights platform for individuals that want to maybe invest $200 or maybe just really want to be informed when they look to engage any kind of company in economic exchange, and they want to know, does this company represent my values? We've decided that to be fiduciaries, if you will, of the entire ecosystem, we're launching our dashboard so that it's insightful for anyone that wants to glean this information. So it's coming soon. We haven't launched it yet, and we're trying to be really pragmatic about how we roll it out. So if any of your users are really engaged and inspired by this conversation, they could be a really good fit as an early user, and we'd love to meet them and potentially welcome them onto the platform when it's ready.
All right. Well, I'll get from you guys whatever we need to make that happen, so anybody listening or watching can reach out on that front. All right. I've got a couple more questions. I think we have enough time to hit them real quick. I do want to ask one thing. So your purpose, your values are very mission driven. It's for the greater good, but you're also running a business that is for profit. You're not a 501c3, are you?
You're not.
Okay. So which is fine. How do you balance the values and the mission and running a profitable, successful business, or trending towards a profitable, successful business since you're in startup phase? Like, how do you maintain that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we always signal. No, please. We always signal to each other with head nods. So we agree with most of the stuff you're saying. So it's easier for us both to nod. But balancing that line for us has been pretty easy in that most people especially in the verticals we're targeting, so the advisory model itself, people pay handsomely for good advice, and people really want to take action because their future depends on it. Their retirement, their cash flow, everything, their kids' education really requires a lot of that sophistication. It doesn't make as much sense for us to not operate as a for-profit business, because so much of the value we're providing is for people that are certainly focusing on how to make a great return for their clients and make themselves a good return as well. So it makes sense also with our backgrounds. We've got 30 years of banking between us. There's really a way to do this and be a good trusted advisor where everybody knows the value they're getting, instead of having to play the I'm not making any money at this card. Like the big four auditors, I mean, they make quite a bit of money even though they can't invest in stocks. But the value they provide is certainly something that benefits capitalism in general. So we model ourselves the same way.
And for the record, I have no problem with you making money. I hope you guys
of course,
make money because I mean you're super successful. So yeah, that wasn't the point of the question. I guess it is just, it's sometimes if you're very mission driven and your missions are not driven by money, but you do need to make money, and I think it's just your moral compass, honestly. I think it's who you are and what you stand for, and that's what's going to keep you with that good balance. So final question before the final question. When you look back 5, 10, 15, how many years, what does Floodlight look like that makes you feel like you were successful? What does it look like?
Well,
and you both have to answer.
Yeah. Success. I will be so proud of our work if Floodlight is a household name, but not because of the brand per se, but because of what it represents. So if people can be sitting around their dinner table or riding on the bus and use Floodlight as an analogy for transparency, accountability, and honesty. And that being the highest standard that we've introduced to the economy, I'll die a happy woman. I'll die on that bus when I hear it said that way.
And I would tie even closer on the same way of if we can get to the point where people start, especially through money, being able to really shift corporate behavior in a way that actually helps humans instead of a way that just helps them to hit EPS, which again, we're capitalists, we get that has to be one and the same. But for us, if there's a way for us to help shift that corporate behavior in a way that says, ooh, we shouldn't cut this corner, because if we get badly evaluated by Floodlight on this, we're going to lose this many shareholders, this many customers. It's going to be that much harder for us to do something that, even though it'd certainly be nice as like a quick fix, cut corners approach, I don't want to do that because it's going to be worse for us in the long run. Just like that common sense approach that should reign in investing, we want to be a huge part of bringing that back. That's Mr. Success for me, if we can do
that. So I'm going to put my hope for your success. My hope for your success is that one day when I'm sitting with clients and they have a question about a company, my answer is, let me floodlight that. So like, let me Google that. Like, let me floodlight that. Like, everything runs through Floodlight to see that's the answer. Like, that's the brand that you guys become. Even though brand isn't the goal, but that's what I hope is success for you. Like, that's what I'll say. So my favorite question, and this has nothing to do with Floodlight, has nothing to do with the rest of our conversation today, but I do think that as entrepreneurs and founders and being able to go out and take this risk to pursue what you value the most, you have to have some type of superpower. So what is your superpower? What's the characteristic about yourself that's allowed you to overcome and reach your goals that separates you from other founders out there?
I wonder if we should give each other our superpowers. I always feel like whenever a question like this comes up, I feel like, does that work?
I like that. Let's do that. Yep. Usually it's just me and one other guest, so there's nobody else to give that. But since you know each other, Aaron, what is Nate's superpower?
This is such a good question. I love it so much. And I don't want this to be too duplicative of earlier, and actually this has been a flaw of Nate's in the past. He is so optimistic and he is so confident. And I think his superpower is really, truly being able to ignore anything on the periphery and focus so hard on his belief and vision, and stick to it so strongly that, like, even if it isn't the exact right path, he's going to win that path. That path's going to work out because of his resilience, his grit, his determination. And it's been amazing to watch that as we've built this company together.
All right, Nate, what's Aaron's superpower?
Yeah. Aaron can literally build a bridge to any human on this planet. It has absolutely nothing to do with their value system, whether they're mean or kind or where they came from. Aaron can find a way to get at what matters to them and really understand that human, or as a segment of a whole group, like what we're targeting. I've never seen that in my life as powerfully exhibited as Aaron does in spades. And that's been just one of the massive helps that she's brought to our business, and why I know we're going to be successful is because we can build from that to everybody who really we're appealing to a common sense approach of just letting people live the lives they want to live better. And I know we're going to be successful because that's a skill set that I'm learning from her every day from.
I love that. I need to have more multiple guests so that they can give each other roses. We don't tell each other we appreciate each other enough. Like, going back to Aaron's comment about what's going to be on my tombstone, like, we don't share these things enough until somebody unfortunately passes away. So the more opportunity we have to highlight and lift people, I think is great. So I'm glad you suggested the giving each other superpower. Anything final that maybe I didn't hit on that you want to make sure we cover about Floodlight or your story, or any advice you'd give to somebody who has a passion that they want to follow, but maybe they're scared? Any closing thoughts?
Just do it. Just do it. Absolutely, just do it. Jump in, do it. Something to tie back to the nonprofit, like, because you're doing something that's aligned with your passion or is maybe rooted in a deeper mission, that does not mean you're doing this not to put yourself in a good financial position. I liken it to, you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And finances are definitely part of that. So go out, start your business, make money, charge more than you think you should in the beginning, and then you'll find the right number. But yeah, it's been the thrill of a lifetime. So anybody that has the chance and the courage to do it, I cheer you on wholeheartedly.
And I totally echo that. And I would just say, I'd say just echoing that as well, but fix problems. There's a whole bunch of people right now that just talk endlessly about all the problems facing our societies, our countries, our populations, demographics. Be a fixer. There's enough people that are complaining. Get out there and actually help it get better.
I think that's a great closing thought. So with that, I'm not even going to say anything more other than floodlightinvest.com. I will have links to that. We'll get some information about if you want to be a part of the pilot for the consumer side of the dashboard. And then I made a note that we're going to do a follow-up episode with the two of you like a year from now or sometime. Just get an update on what Floodlight's doing and how things are going to keep the light, pun intended, shining on you guys so more and more people find you. But I want to thank you both for taking time on a Friday afternoon to talk about Floodlight, but more importantly, talk about your journey and your experiences, which will hopefully inspire more people to go solve problems and follow their passion. So I'm glad that Victor introduced us. Victor, thank you again. I really enjoyed it and appreciate your time. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for listening. Show notes for all the connections to Nate and Aaron and to the company, and we will see you all in the next episode.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, everybody.